At my sister's engagement, she giggled into the mic. My sister's ex left her for a real woman. My mom smirked. Even he had standards. The crowd's laughter was cut short when a sharp-eyed woman slammed the mic off. My sister's fiancé's face went pale. Her gaze locked onto me, pity, a secret, and vengeance. I was hiding behind the dessert table when Lena grabbed the microphone. The worst part wasn't what she was about to say. It was that I'd heard her rehearsing it in the bathroom 20 minutes earlier. She'd been standing at the mirror, adjusting her engagement ring, practicing the delivery with different tones. Giggly first, then dramatic, finally settling on that sing-song voice she used when she wanted to sound innocent while delivering a blow. I'd been in the stall, frozen, listening to her workshop my humiliation. My sister's ex left her for a real woman, she announced now to the garden full of faces I'd known my entire life. The same neighbors who used to compliment Mom on having such sweet daughters. The same relatives who'd watched me graduate valedictorian, who'd celebrated when I got my teaching job, who'd sent sympathy cards when Dad died. Before we continue, I want to thank you for joining me in sharing stories about finding strength after betrayal. If you believe women deserve to know the truth about toxic relationships, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more women who need to hear this. Now let's see how this unfolds. Their laughter started small, a few chuckles from the back row where my cousins sat with their husbands. Then it spread like spilled wine across white fabric, staining everything it touched. Mrs. Henderson from next door actually slapped her knee. My own godmother covered her mouth, but her shoulders shook with suppressed giggles. I gripped the edge of the dessert table, my fingers sticky with frosting from the elaborate cake Lena had insisted on. 3 tiers, covered in roses that matched her dress, topped with figurines that looked nothing like her or James. Everything about this party was performance, including this moment. Mom stepped forward and my stomach dropped. I knew that look. The one that meant she was about to add her own commentary to make sure everyone really understood the joke. She took the microphone from Lena's manicured hand. Even he had standards, Mom said, her voice carrying across the garden with perfect clarity. She squeezed Lena's shoulder like she was congratulating her for a particularly clever observation. My youngest always did attract quality men. The words hung in the air like smoke. Quality men. As if David leaving me for his secretary was somehow proof of his good judgment rather than his cowardice. As if the 3 years we'd spent together, the weekends fixing up his house, the holidays with his family who still sent me Christmas cards, the engagement ring he'd helped me pick out for myself before he changed his mind, meant nothing. I remembered that ring now, sitting in my jewelry box at home. Too expensive to return, too painful to wear, too sentimental to throw away. David had insisted we go to 3 different stores before finding the perfect one. It has to be right, he'd said, holding my hand across the jewelry counter. This is forever. Forever lasted exactly 18 months. Aunt Carol leaned over to whisper something to her daughter, both of them glancing in my direction. I caught fragments, always too serious. No wonder he should have seen it coming. The terrible thing was they weren't entirely wrong. I had been serious. I'd talked about mortgages and retirement plans while David still wanted to go out drinking with his college friends every Friday. I'd suggested couples counseling when we started fighting about money. I'd been the one pushing for wedding dates and venue bookings. Maybe I had driven him away. Maybe his secretary, with her easy laugh and her willingness to stay late at the office without complaining about dinner plans, really was a better match. Maybe Mom was right. Maybe he did have standards I'd never measured up to. But standing there watching my family treat my heartbreak like entertainment, I realized the real problem wasn't that David had left. The real problem was that the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had been waiting for this moment. They'd been storing up my failures, collecting evidence of my inadequacy, preparing for the day they could finally say what they'd always believed, that I wasn't good enough. Lena continued her speech, talking about true love and finding your person. James stood beside her, uncomfortable but silent, occasionally glancing toward where I stood. He'd always been kind to me, asking about my students, remembering my birthday. Now he looked like he wanted to disappear. The evening breeze picked up, rustling the paper lanterns Mom had hung from every tree branch. She'd spent weeks planning this party, calling it the social event of the season. She'd invited everyone. Old neighbors, distant relatives, people from her book club who barely knew Lena. Also, she could show off her successful daughter, the one who'd landed a good man and kept him. I started backing away from the dessert table, hoping to make it to the house before anyone noticed. My heel caught on the brick edging around Mom's prized rose garden and I stumbled slightly. The movement caught Lena's attention mid-sentence. Our eyes met across the garden. For just a second I saw something flicker across her face. Not quite guilt but recognition. She knew I'd heard her practicing. She knew this wasn't spontaneous cruelty but calculated humiliation. Then the moment passed and she smiled, that bright, innocent smile she'd perfected since childhood. The one that had gotten her out of trouble for breaking my toys, for borrowing my clothes without asking, for dating the boy I'd had a crush on in high school. I turned and walked toward the side gate, my heels clicking against the stone pathway Dad had laid the summer before he died. Each step felt deliberate, final. Behind me the laughter continued, mixing with the evening sounds of suburbia. Sprinklers turning on, dogs barking, the distant hum of air conditioners working against the heat. I didn't know then that someone else had witnessed everything. Someone who would change everything. I spent the week after the engagement party grading 5th grade essays about summer vacation. Every paper seemed to mock me. Children writing about family trips, parents who loved each other, homes where people were kind. I marked them with increasingly aggressive red ink, taking out my frustration on dangling participles and run-on sentences. Thursday morning my laptop chimed with a new email. The sender's name meant nothing to me, elisecarter.designs@gmail.com, but the subject line made my coffee mug freeze halfway to my lips. You don't know me, but I know who he really is. My first instinct was to delete it. Spam, obviously. Someone had gotten my information from a mailing list, probably trying to sell me life insurance or debt consolidation. But something about the phrasing nagged at me. The specificity of who he really is rather than a generic, about your ex, or regarding David. I opened it. The email was short, professional, and completely unhinged all at once. The woman, Elise Carter, claimed to be David's wife. Not ex-wife. Current legal wife. She'd attached what looked like a marriage certificate, bank statements, and a photo of David in a tuxedo standing next to a blonde woman in white. I stared at the screen until my eyes watered. The photo was dated 2 years before David and I had even met. The marriage certificate showed a wedding date that would have made David married for the entire duration of our relationship. My hands shook as I scrolled through the attached bank records. Joint accounts. A mortgage in both their names. Credit cards with her name as the primary holder and his as an authorized user. The address was in Portland, 3 hours north of where David claimed to live alone in his bachelor pad apartment. The woman had written her story in bullet points, like she was presenting evidence in court. How she'd supported David through his entrepreneurial phase when his marketing business failed. How she'd taken out loans in her name to keep them afloat. How she'd worked double shifts at her graphic design firm while he figured things out. How one morning she'd woken up to find him gone. Clothes, car, even the coffee maker they'd received as a wedding gift. She'd hired a private investigator. Found out about the apartment he'd rented using money from their joint account. Found out about me. Found out about his job at the advertising firm. The same job he'd told me was his first real career opportunity. The one that had finally made him ready to settle down. I read the email 17 times. Then I walked to my kitchen and threw up in the sink. The next part of her message was what really destroyed me. She'd been following David's social media, trying to understand who he'd become. She'd seen photos of him with me at company parties, weekend trips, family dinners. She'd watched our relationship unfold through his Instagram posts like some twisted reality show. He used the same lines on you, she wrote. The same restaurant for your first anniversary that he took me to for our first anniversary. The same vacation spot in Cannon Beach. Even the same engagement ring design. I helped him pick it out 3 years ago, thinking it was for me someday. My phone rang. Unknown number, Portland area code. I answered without thinking. Sarah. The voice was steady, controlled. This is Elise Carter. I sent you an email. This is insane, I managed. This can't be real. I know how it sounds. I've been trying to figure out how to approach you for months. I saw the engagement announcement in your local paper. Your sister sent it to the community newsletter. It got picked up online. When I realized he was planning to marry someone else while still married to me, I knew I had to act. Why now? Why me? There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, more human. Because I've been where you are. I've been the woman who everyone whispers about, who everyone thinks wasn't good enough to keep her man. And because what he's doing to you and to your sister, it's not just cruel. It's criminal. She suggested we meet. Coffee somewhere public, somewhere I'd feel safe. She could bring documentation, answer questions, prove everything she'd told me. Or I could hang up, delete the email, and pretend this conversation never happened. I chose the coffee shop downtown, the one with mismatched furniture and terrible acoustic music. Tuesday afternoon, when the lunch crowd would be gone but the place wouldn't be empty. Neutral territory. She arrived exactly on time, carrying a leather portfolio that looked expensive and professional. I recognized her immediately from the wedding photo, though she looked older now, more tired. Her blonde hair was shorter, styled in a way that suggested she'd stopped caring about impressing anyone. She wore simple black pants and a gray sweater that brought out the sharpness in her blue eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. Her voice was the same one from the phone, controlled, measured, like she'd practiced this conversation. She ordered black coffee and opened her portfolio without ceremony. More documents, more photos, more evidence of a life I'd never known existed. Their wedding album. Lease agreements. Holiday cards addressed to Mr. and Mrs. David Morrison. "He told me his parents were dead," I said, staring at a Christmas photo of David with an older couple in matching sweaters. "They live in Vancouver. They think I abandoned their son." Elise turned the page to reveal more family photos. "They sent me a card last Christmas asking me to stop being stubborn and come home." The coffee shop soundtrack shifted to some indie folk song about heartbreak and healing. The irony was suffocating. A college student at the next table was highlighting textbook passages about constitutional law, completely absorbed in a world where rules mattered and people faced consequences for their actions. "What do you want from me?" I asked. Elise closed the portfolio and looked directly at me. For the first time since she'd arrived, her composure cracked slightly. "I want him to face what he's done. Not just to us but to your sister. She doesn't know she's about to marry a man who's already married. In most states, that makes their ceremony invalid and him guilty of fraud. She won't believe me. My family won't believe me. They'll believe court documents. They'll believe a marriage certificate that predates their relationship by 2 years." Rain started hitting the coffee shop windows, turning the afternoon gray and muffled. Elise reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, her own for freelance graphic design. On the back, she'd written her personal cell phone number. "Think about it," she said, standing to leave. "But don't think too long. Their wedding is in 6 weeks. She was halfway to the door when she turned back. "Sarah? What happened at that engagement party? I saw the video." My blood went cold. "What video?" "Someone posted it online. Your sister's speech, your mother's comment. It has over 50,000 views." She paused. "You deserved better than that. From all of them." Then she was gone, leaving me alone with the rain and the terrible knowledge that my humiliation had become entertainment for strangers across the internet. I sat in my car for 20 minutes after Elise left, watching the rain streak down my windshield and thinking about 50,000 strangers laughing at my family's cruelty. The video was probably still circulating, being shared in group chats and tagged with crying laughing emojis. My humiliation had become content. That night I found the video. Someone had titled it, "Sister Destroys Sibling at Engagement Party," with fire emojis. The comments were worse than I'd imagined. People calling me pathetic, ugly, desperate. Others defending me, which somehow felt just as awful. I was a cautionary tale now, a meme about family dysfunction and romantic failure. I called Elise at 11 p.m. "I'll help you," I said when she answered on the first ring. "But I have conditions." "I'm listening." "This isn't about revenge. I don't want to hurt Lena just to hurt her. I want her to know who she's marrying before she makes the biggest mistake of her life." There was silence on the other end. "Then, that's more generous than I would be. And I want my family to understand what they did to me. Not through me screaming at them or causing a scene, but through seeing the truth. The truth that they humiliated you while defending a man who was lying to everyone?" Exactly. Elise's goal was simple. Stop the wedding and expose David for what he was. But she needed someone on the inside, someone who could get close enough to the family to make the revelation impossible to ignore or dismiss. She tried reaching out to Lena directly months ago, but her emails had gone unanswered. She'd even called the house once, but Mom had hung up the moment she mentioned David's name. "Your sister thinks I'm a crazy ex trying to cause trouble," Elise explained during our second meeting, this time at a diner outside town where no one would recognize us. "But your family. They'll have to listen to you." "They don't listen to me. You saw the video." "They'll listen to evidence. They'll listen to legal documents they can't argue with." The plan required me to reconnect with Lena, something I'd been avoiding since the engagement party. But 2 days later, I called her with my best impression of someone who'd processed their feelings and was ready to move forward. "Sarah." She sounded genuinely surprised. "I wasn't sure you were speaking to me. I've been thinking about what you said at the party. About moving on, finding the right person." Each word tasted like soap, but I forced them out. "Maybe you were right. Maybe David leaving was the best thing that could have happened to me." The relief in her voice was unmistakable. "Oh honey, I'm so glad you're seeing it that way. I was worried I'd been too harsh, but sometimes people need to hear the truth. I want to help with the wedding. I know I've been distant, but you're my sister. This is your big day." Lena practically squealed with excitement. "Really? Because James and I could use all the help we can get. Mom's been so stressed trying to coordinate everything, and the wedding planner keeps changing her mind about the timeline. She invited me over that weekend to help address invitations." I sat at her dining room table, writing names and addresses in my careful teacher handwriting, while she chattered about flower arrangements and seating charts. It was almost like we were kids again, working on school projects together before everything got complicated. "You know what's funny?" Lena said, sealing another envelope. "David asked James about you last week. Wanted to know how you were doing." My pen stopped moving. "He did. James told him you seemed to be doing better. David said he hoped there were no hard feelings." She laughed. "As if you'd have hard feelings about him finding his soulmate." I managed to keep writing, though my handwriting got shakier. "His soulmate. That's what he calls Rebecca. His fiancée. They're getting married next month, did you know? James and I are invited to the engagement party." She looked up at me with concern. "Is that weird for you? I mean, we don't have to go." The room tilted sideways. "He's engaged." "Oh Sarah, I'm sorry. Thought you knew. It's been all over social media." Lena pulled out her phone and showed me David's Instagram. There he was, grinning next to a brunette woman who looked nothing like either Elise or me. The caption read, "She said yes. Can't wait to start forever with my beautiful Rebecca." I excused myself to the bathroom and texted Elise immediately, "There's a third woman. He's engaged to someone else." Her response came within minutes. "I know. That's why we need to move fast." Over the next 3 weeks, Elise and I developed a system. We met twice a week. Once at the library downtown, once at a park where we could walk and talk without being overheard. She brought more evidence each time. Emails David had sent to Rebecca that were identical to ones he'd sent to both of us. Photos of the same jewelry he'd bought for all 3 women. Even restaurant receipts showing he'd taken each of us to the exact same places for special occasions. The most damaging discovery came when Elise found David's first divorce file. He'd been married before either of us knew him to a woman named Jennifer in California. The divorce had been filed but never finalized, a technicality involving unsigned paperwork and missed court dates that made all his subsequent relationships legally meaningless. "He's not just a cheater," Elise said, spreading the documents across the library table between us. "He's a serial bigamist. Jennifer, me, now your sister, and Rebecca. None of us were ever legally married to him because he never legally divorced Jennifer." I stared at the papers until the words blurred together. How many more women are there? I found traces of at least 2 others between Jennifer and me. But I can't prove those relationships involved marriage promises. We created a timeline spanning 7 years and 5 women. The pattern was always the same. David would find someone stable, someone willing to support him financially and emotionally. He'd make promises about marriage and forever while systematically draining their resources and confidence. When they started asking for real commitment or when someone better came along, he'd disappear. "Your sister's the first one where he's actually going through with a wedding ceremony," Elise noted. "Maybe because her family has money. Maybe because she's young enough to not ask hard questions about his past." The final piece of our plan came together during my 4th weekend helping with wedding preparations. Lena mentioned that David wanted to have his bachelor party the same weekend as her final dress fitting and rehearsal dinner. "He's flying to Vegas with his college friends," she said, not noticing how my hands clenched around the invitation I was addressing. "I'm a little nervous about him being around all those women, but James says I should trust him." That's when Elise and I decided on our timing. The rehearsal dinner was perfect, intimate enough that David couldn't escape, public enough that he couldn't deny the evidence, formal enough that legal documents would carry weight. Family and close friends only, which meant everyone who mattered to Lena would witness the truth. "No drama," Elise insisted during our final planning meeting. "No screaming, no confrontation. Just facts. Just documents. Just truth." I agreed, though part of me wondered if the truth would be enough. My family had already chosen their narrative about me, about David, about what had happened. Would evidence be enough to change minds that were already made up? "It has to be," Elise said when I voiced my doubts. "Because the alternative is watching your sister make the same mistake we did and then watching him do this to someone else." The night before the rehearsal dinner I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Lena trying on her wedding dress, about Mom finalizing seating arrangements, about James nervously practicing his vows. Tomorrow I would either save my sister from a terrible mistake or destroy her happiness based on the word of a stranger I'd known for 3 weeks. But when I closed my eyes I saw that video again. I heard the laughter, felt the humiliation, remembered the isolation of being the family disappointment. Maybe it was time for someone else to be the center of a scandal that wasn't their fault. The rehearsal dinner was everything Mom had dreamed of. String lights wrapped around the pergola in the country club's garden room, round tables draped in blush pink linens, centerpieces of white roses that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I'd helped Lena choose the menu 3 weeks ago, back when I was still pretending to be the supportive sister who'd moved on from her heartbreak. Now I stood near the bar, a gin and tonic melting in my sweaty palm, watching David work the room like the charming businessman he'd always pretended to be. He'd flown back from Vegas that morning, tan and relaxed, telling anyone who'd listen about his epic bachelor weekend with college friends who'd probably never existed. James's parents had flown in from Minnesota. Quiet, practical people who kept glancing around the room like they weren't sure they belonged at such an elaborate affair. David had charmed them during cocktail hour, telling stories about his marketing success and his plans to take care of their son's new wife. Mrs. Peterson had actually blushed when he complimented her dress. The irony made my stomach twist. Here was a room full of people celebrating love and commitment, toasting a man who'd never legally committed to anyone in his life. Lena looked radiant in a flowing cream dress that complemented her engagement ring. The same ring design David had originally chosen with Elise. The same ring he'd probably promised to Rebecca too. She moved from table to table, accepting congratulations and compliments, completely unaware that her fiancé was scanning his phone for texts from wife number 1 and girlfriend number 3. "Ladies and gentlemen," the wedding coordinator announced, tapping her wine glass with a butter knife. "The bride would like to say a few words before dinner is served." My pulse started hammering against my ribs. This wasn't part of the plan. Elise was supposed to arrive during the cocktail hour before any speeches, before David could position himself as the victim of a crazy ex-girlfriend's delusions. Lena took the microphone from the coordinator, her smile bright enough to power the string lights. "Thank you all for being here tonight. James and I are so grateful to have our families and closest friends celebrating with us." She looked directly at me, her expression soft with what looked like genuine affection. "I especially want to thank my sister Sarah for all her help with the wedding planning. She's been through a tough time lately, but she's shown me what real strength looks like." The room murmured approvingly. Several relatives nodded in my direction. Aunt Carol even raised her wine glass in a small salute. "Some of you might remember that Sarah's relationship didn't work out the way she hoped," Lena continued, and my blood turned to ice water. "But you know what? Sometimes things fall apart so better things can fall together." A few people chuckled, thinking this was leading to some inspirational message about resilience and moving forward. "My sister's ex left her for a real woman," Lena said, and there it was. The same cruel line from the engagement party delivered with the same bright smile. But watching Sarah handle that with such grace has reminded me how lucky I am to have found someone who truly values commitment. The room erupted in polite laughter and applause. David stood and took a theatrical bow, then blew a kiss to Lena. I wanted to disappear into the floor. Then the laughter started dying. A murmur spread through the crowd as people noticed someone new had entered the garden room. Heads turned toward the entrance, conversations stopped mid-sentence. Elise stood in the doorway wearing a navy blue dress that looked like it cost more than most people's cars. Her blonde hair was styled in a sleek chignon, her makeup was flawless, and she carried herself with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you're about to change everything. She didn't rush. She didn't shout. She simply walked through the room like she belonged there, her heels clicking against the stone floor with perfect rhythm. The jazz trio in the corner kept playing for a few more measures before they too noticed the shift in atmosphere and let their instruments fade to silence. David saw her before anyone else understood what was happening. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. He took a step backward, bumping into James, who caught his arm with concern. "Buddy, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Elise reached the front of the room and stopped directly in front of the head table where David and Lena sat with their wedding party. She opened her small clutch purse and withdrew a manila folder that somehow looked both elegant and ominous. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "I don't mean to interrupt such a lovely celebration, but there's something everyone needs to know." Lena still held the microphone, her mouth slightly open in confusion. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "My name is Elise Carter." She looked directly at David, who seemed frozen in his chair. "I'm David's wife." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the fountain outside in the courtyard, the distant sound of traffic on the main road, the soft buzz of the string lights overhead. "That's impossible," Mom said from her seat at the head table. "David's never been married." Elise opened the manila folder and held up an official-looking document. "According to the state of Oregon, we were married 3 years ago. The marriage has never been dissolved." She turned to face the room, addressing the crowd like a prosecutor presenting evidence to a jury. "David Morrison is legally married to me. This wedding ceremony would constitute bigamy, which is a felony in this state." David finally found his voice. "This is insane. Elise, what are you doing here? We divorced 2 years ago." "No, David, we didn't." Elise's voice remained calm, professional. "You left. You disappeared. You never filed the divorce papers we discussed. You're still my legal husband." She reached into the folder again and pulled out more documents. Bank statements, photographs, what looked like a private investigator's report. "I have documentation showing you've been living under false pretenses, maintaining relationships with multiple women while legally married to me." James stood up slowly, his face pale. "David, is this true?" Before David could answer, Lena grabbed the microphone stand with both hands. "This is ridiculous. You're obviously some jealous ex trying to ruin our wedding. Security should remove you." "I brought copies of all the legal documents for anyone who wants to examine them," Elise said, holding up a stack of papers. "Marriage certificate, joint tax returns, mortgage documents, credit card statements. All showing that David Morrison has been my legal husband for 3 years." She placed the stack on the head table right in front of Lena. "I also have photographs of David with at least 2 other women he's been engaged to simultaneously, including one named Rebecca who believes she's marrying him next month." Mom's wine glass slipped from her fingers and exploded against the stone floor, sending shards skittering under nearby tables. The sound seemed to break whatever spell had held the room frozen. Suddenly everyone was talking at once, guests turning to each other with shocked expressions, family members demanding explanations, the wedding coordinator frantically whispering into her headset. Through the chaos, Lena's eyes found mine across the room. Her expression wasn't angry or confused anymore. It was knowing. Hurt. The look of someone who'd just realized they'd been played by more than one person. She didn't ask me why I'd done this. He didn't have to. In that moment, she understood exactly what I'd been trying to tell her about the man she'd thought she was going to marry. And for the first time since David had left me, I didn't feel like the family failure anymore. The room erupted into chaos, but Lena's voice cut through it all. She grabbed the microphone with both hands and faced the crowd with desperate determination. "This woman is lying," she announced, her voice shaking but loud. "This is obviously some jealous ex-girlfriend trying to destroy our happiness. David told me about her. She's been stalking him for months." Several guests nodded sympathetically. Aunt Margaret actually stood up and started clapping. Don't let some bitter woman ruin your special day, honey. But Elise wasn't finished. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, her movements still calm and deliberate despite the chaos around her. I thought you might say that, she said, her voice carrying over the crowd noise. So I brought audio recordings. She connected her phone to the sound system that had been playing jazz music moments before. The wedding coordinator tried to stop her, but James held up his hand. Let her play it, he said quietly. I need to hear this. David's voice filled the garden room, tinny through the speakers but unmistakably his. She's so gullible, man. Lena actually believes I've never been married before. Can you imagine? 26 years old and that naive. The laughter that followed was cruel, accompanied by clinking glasses and background bar noise. Another male voice, one I didn't recognize, responded, What about the sister? Sarah, didn't you date her for like 3 years? God, don't remind me. 3 years of her talking about our future, planning our retirement, asking when I was going to propose. It was exhausting. At least Lena's fun. She doesn't ask questions about where I go or who I'm with. The room went dead silent. Even the fountain outside seemed to stop bubbling. Plus her family has money, David's recorded voice continued. Sarah was a teacher. What was I going to do with that salary? But Lena's trust fund, her parents' connections. This wedding is going to pay for itself through networking alone. Mom's face went ashen. She'd been so proud of the expensive venue, the elaborate menu, the guest list full of her wealthy friends. Now she understood she'd been showcasing her own daughter like a prize to be won. Lena's hands trembled as she set down the microphone. The cream dress that had made her look radiant now seemed to wash all the color from her face. Turn it off, she whispered. But the recording kept playing. David's voice describing Lena as hot but not too bright, laughing about how easy it was to convince her that his mysterious business trips were building their future together, mocking the way she practiced her wedding vows in the mirror. James walked over to the sound system and yanked the cord from the wall. The silence that followed was deafening. David finally found his voice. Those recordings are fake. AI can make anyone sound like they're saying anything now. This is a setup. The recordings were made at Murphy's Bar on 5th Street, Elise said. Last Thursday night. I can provide receipts showing you were there, credit card records, even security footage if needed. She turned to address the room again. I have similar recordings of David discussing his relationship with a woman named Rebecca, who he's also engaged to marry. She's supposed to be his wife next month in Portland. The wedding party looked like they'd been struck by lightning. Lena's maid of honor, her college roommate Jessica, pulled out her phone and started frantically typing. Oh my God, Jessica said after a moment. Lena, there's a Rebecca Morrison on Instagram. Her profile says she's getting married to David Morrison next month. She held up her phone, showing photos of David and Rebecca at what looked like an engagement party. The same poses, the same romantic captions, even the same restaurant where David had taken both Lena and me for our special occasions. Mom finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah, did you know about this? Every head in the room turned toward me. The weight of their stares, some accusatory, some confused, some pitying, should have crushed me. 6 months ago it would have. But standing there watching the truth finally emerge, I felt lighter than I had in years. I believed I was crazy for too long, I said, my voice steady and clear. I don't do that anymore. The admission hung in the air like a challenge. Mom's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. She couldn't argue with me, couldn't call me fragile or delusional, because the evidence was right there in front of everyone. James walked over to David, his face a mask of controlled rage. Get out. No. Before I call the police. David looked around the room desperately, searching for allies, for someone who might still believe his denials. But every face showed the same expression, disgust mixed with pity. Not for him but for themselves, for how completely they'd been fooled. Lena, baby, you have to believe me, he pleaded. This is all some conspiracy. Your sister's jealous because she couldn't keep me, so she's trying to destroy us. Lena picked up one of the legal documents Elise had placed on the table. Her hands shook as she read it, but her voice was steady when she spoke. Get out of my sight. Don't call me, don't text me, don't come near me or my family ever again. David left without another word, practically running through the garden room toward the parking lot. Within minutes we heard his car speeding away, tires squealing on the pavement. The aftermath felt surreal. Guests milled around uncertainly, unsure whether to leave or stay, whether to offer comfort or pretend nothing had happened. The wedding coordinator frantically made phone calls, probably canceling vendors and trying to salvage what deposits she could. 3 days later, the story exploded online. Someone had recorded Elise's confrontation and David's recorded confessions on their phone. The video went viral within hours, shared across every social media platform with captions like, "Wedding crasher exposes serial cheater," and "Hero wife saves bride from bigamist." Elise became an overnight sensation. News outlets picked up the story, casting her as the brave woman who'd saved multiple people from a dangerous fraud. She started getting interview requests, book deal offers, even movie rights inquiries. The wedding was cancelled, obviously. Vendors were surprisingly understanding once they saw the news coverage. Several even offered to donate their services to domestic violence charities in solidarity. The expensive venue became a cautionary tale about vetting your guests' backgrounds. David disappeared completely. His apartment was cleaned out within a week, his phone number disconnected, his social media accounts deleted. James hired a private investigator who discovered David had done this before. In 3 different states with at least 7 different women over the past decade. Lena moved back into Mom's house, spending her days in pajamas, scrolling through the hundreds of supportive messages she'd received from strangers who'd experienced similar betrayals. She lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks, her engagement ring sitting abandoned on her nightstand like evidence of a crime. Mom stopped hosting her book club meetings, stopped inviting friends over for dinner, stopped turning on lights during the day. The house that had once been the center of neighborhood social life became a tomb where 2 broken women nursed their humiliation in darkness. But something unexpected happened in the weeks that followed. Women started reaching out, not just to Elise but to me. Teachers from other schools who'd seen the story on local news. Former students' mothers who remembered me from parent conferences. Strangers who'd found my contact information online and wanted to share their own stories of manipulation and betrayal. Each message was a variation on the same theme. "I thought I was the only one. Thank you for showing me I wasn't crazy. Your courage helped me leave my own toxic situation." For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't the family failure. I wasn't the woman who couldn't keep a man. I was the woman who'd refused to stay broken, who'd chosen truth over comfortable lies, who'd saved her sister from making the same mistake she'd made. And finally, beautifully, everyone else knew it too. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen preparing dinner for 6 people, the most I'd entertained since David left. My apartment looked different now. I'd painted the walls a warm sage green, bought real furniture instead of the hand-me-downs I'd been living with, and hung artwork that actually meant something to me. The space felt like mine for the first time in years. Elise arrived first, carrying a bottle of wine and a folder full of legal documents that had become her signature accessory. She'd cut her hair shorter since the rehearsal dinner, and there was a lightness to her movements that hadn't been there during our secret meetings at coffee shops and libraries. "The lawyer thinks we'll have the settlement finalized by Christmas," she said, setting the wine on my counter. "David's finally agreed to sign the divorce papers in exchange for me not pursuing criminal charges." My old college roommate Maria came next, followed by 2 teachers from my school who'd become real friends after years of just being colleagues. They'd all seen the viral video, read the news articles, watched me transform from the woman who ate lunch alone in her classroom to someone who could laugh about the whole mess. The last guest surprised me. James knocked on my door at exactly 7, holding a small potted plant and looking nervous. "I hope it's okay that I came," he said. "I know things are complicated with Lena, but I wanted to thank you properly." I hadn't spoken to James since the night everything fell apart, though I'd heard through mutual friends that he'd been taking care of Lena, helping her process the trauma and rebuild her confidence. The fact that he'd driven an hour to my apartment meant something. Over dinner we talked about everything except David. Maria told stories about her new job in Portland. The teachers complained about standardized testing and shared classroom disasters that had us laughing until our sides hurt. Elise described the book deal she'd signed, a memoir about financial abuse in relationships and how women could protect themselves. "The publisher wants to include your perspective too," she said, turning to me. "You're part of the story, how you chose to help instead of staying silent. They think it could help other women in similar situations." I'd been writing again, something I hadn't done since college. Not just journaling about my feelings but real writing. Essays about gaslighting, about family dynamics, about the difference between supporting someone and enabling their delusions. The local newspaper had published 2 of my pieces, and I'd gotten emails from women who said my words had helped them recognize patterns in their own relationships. "I've been thinking about that," I said. "Not just the book, but something bigger. A resource for women who need practical help getting out of bad situations." James leaned forward, interested. "What kind of help?" "Financial planning, legal advice, emotional support." David wasn't just manipulating us emotionally, he was systematically destroying our financial independence. I gave him money for his business ventures that never materialized. Elise took out loans in her name. Rebecca probably did the same thing. Elise nodded. The private investigator found at least 3 other women who'd lent him significant amounts of money. One lost her house because she'd used it as collateral for a loan he never repaid. "That's criminal," Maria said, her voice sharp with anger. "It should be," I agreed. "But the law treats financial abuse like a civil matter instead of the crime it really is. Women lose everything and then get blamed for being stupid enough to trust someone they loved." The conversation continued long after we'd finished dessert. We talked about starting a nonprofit, maybe partnering with existing domestic violence organizations, creating resources that address the financial recovery aspect of leaving abusive relationships. By the time everyone left, we had the skeleton of a business plan sketched out on my dining room table. 2 weeks later, a package arrived at my apartment with no return address. Inside was the microphone from Lena's engagement party, the one she'd used to humiliate me in front of our entire family. Underneath it was a handwritten note on her monogrammed stationery. "Sarah," it read in her careful cursive, "I've been listening to recordings of myself from that night. I heard what I said to you, how I said it, the way everyone laughed. I heard myself become someone I don't recognize. I don't know how to apologize for that, but I'm working on figuring it out. I hope someday you let me try. L." I held the microphone for a long time, remembering the weight of those words, the laughter that had followed, the isolation I'd felt standing at the back of the garden. But the memory didn't have the same power over me anymore. It was just something that had happened, not something that defined me. I put the microphone in my closet and never thought about it again. The nonprofit became real faster than any of us expected. Elise's media attention had connected us with other women who'd survived financial abuse, with lawyers who worked pro bono, with therapists who specialized in economic recovery. We called it Foundation. Simple, strong, suggesting both new beginnings and solid ground to build on. Our first client was a woman named Patricia whose husband had systematically destroyed her credit over 15 years of marriage. She came to our office, a small suite above a coffee shop downtown, carrying a banker's box full of financial documents and a story that sounded depressingly familiar. "I don't know where to start," she said, tears streaming down her face. "He took out credit cards in my name, forged my signature on loans, even stole my identity to open accounts I didn't know existed. I have negative $200,000 in net worth and no idea how to fix it." Elise walked her through the legal options while I helped her create a basic budget and identify immediate safety concerns. It was the first time I'd felt truly useful in years. Not just helping someone grade papers or organize their classroom, but actually changing the trajectory of someone's life. 6 months after the rehearsal dinner that changed everything, I ran into Mom at the grocery store. She looked older, smaller somehow, her hair grown out and streaked with more gray than I remembered. We stood in the cereal aisle, both holding shopping baskets, neither quite sure what to say. "You look good," she said finally. "Happy." "I am happy. The work you're doing with that organization, I saw the article in the Tribune. I'm proud of you." It was the first time she'd said those words to me about anything that mattered. I waited for the rush of validation I'd been craving my entire life, but it didn't come. Instead, I felt something quieter, more solid, the knowledge that I didn't need her approval anymore. "Thank you," I said. "That means something." We hugged briefly, awkwardly, and went our separate ways. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, and it wasn't reconciliation, but it was something, acknowledgement maybe, that we'd both learned things about ourselves that night. Elise and I met for coffee every Tuesday now, but we rarely talked about David anymore. Instead, we discussed foundation bylaws and grant applications, shared stories about the women we were helping, planned workshops on financial literacy and legal rights. We'd gone from being 2 women destroyed by the same man to being partners in something larger than our individual healing. The morning I finished writing the first draft of my book, part memoir, part practical guide for women leaving financially abusive relationships, I realized I could walk into any room without flinching. Not because I'd gotten revenge on the people who'd hurt me, but because I'd transformed that hurt into something useful. Some stories don't end with apologies or comeuppances. They end with the quiet satisfaction of work that matters, relationships built on honesty instead of performance, and the bone-deep knowledge that you've become someone who can't be easily broken again. That was enough. That was everything. If this story of truth and transformation had you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Elise walked into that rehearsal dinner with legal documents, completely changing everything. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more empowering stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.
My name is Haley Wilson, I'm 32, and I never thought checking my mailbox would change my life. For months, I'd been eagerly anticipating my brother Kevin's wedding invitation. When the envelope finally arrived, my heart soared, until I opened it. Inside wasn't an invitation, but a handwritten note. "Sorry, dear, this event is adults only." Adults only? I am an adult. The truth hit me like a punch. My brother's fiancée, Stephanie, didn't want me there. Confusion, hurt, and anger flooded through me. Before I dive deeper into this emotional roller coaster, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that subscribe button, and join me as I share how being uninvited to my brother's wedding led to the most transformative journey of my life. Kevin and I grew up thick as thieves in suburban Philadelphia, just two siblings against the world. For years older than me, he was my protector, my confidant, and often my accomplice in childhood mischief. We'd spend summers building elaborate forts in our backyard, creating entire worlds where nothing could touch us. Kevin taught me to ride a bike, helped me with math homework, and chased away the neighborhood kids who teased me about my braces in 7th grade. Our bond solidified when our parents' marriage imploded. I was 15, Kevin 19, and just starting college. The divorce was messy. Shouting matches, slammed doors, and tense custody arrangements. While our parents were busy tearing each other apart, Kevin became my anchor. He'd drive home from Penn State most weekends just to make sure I was okay, taking me for ice cream and letting me vent about the chaos at home. "It's you and me, Hales," he'd say, using the nickname only he was allowed to use. "We're the only ones who understand what this feels like." When I graduated high school, Kevin was there cheering louder than anyone. When I got my first heartbreak in college, he drove 3 hours to bring me chicken soup and watch terrible action movies until I laughed again. When I landed my first marketing job in Boston, he helped me move and assembled all my IKEA furniture without complaining. That's who we were to each other, constants in a changing world. Until Stephanie. Kevin met her 4 years ago at the prestigious law firm where they both worked in Boston. I remember his early texts about her, how brilliant she was in the courtroom, how she laughed at his terrible jokes, how she challenged him to be better. I was happy for him. Kevin had dated casually for years, but never seemed to find someone who matched his ambition and intellect. Our first meeting was at an upscale restaurant in Back Bay. I noticed how Kevin constantly looked to Stephanie for approval, a subtle shift in his confidence that unsettled me. Stephanie was polished and poised in her designer dress, pearl earrings catching the light as she assessed me with a practiced smile. "Kevin's told me so much about you," she said, but her tone suggested those stories might not have been flattering. Throughout dinner, she steered conversations toward their law firm colleagues and country club connections. Worlds I didn't belong to with my creative marketing career and modest apartment. When I brought up childhood memories, Stephanie would subtly change the subject, as if our shared history was irrelevant to Kevin's future. The changes in Kevin happened gradually. First, he stopped answering my calls immediately, often taking days to return them. Our Sunday night phone calls, a tradition since college, became monthly, then quarterly. When we did speak, conversations revolved around his cases or Stephanie's accomplishments. He rarely asked about my life anymore. "Kevin's just busy," our mom would say when I expressed concern. That's what happens when you're building a future with someone. But it felt like more than busyness. It felt like erasure. I made efforts to maintain our connection. I sent thoughtful birthday gifts, arranged tickets to Celtics games, his favorite team, and suggested brunches that worked with his schedule. Most attempts were met with last-minute cancellations or polite but distant interactions when we did meet. Meanwhile, I built my own life in Boston. I worked my way up to senior marketing manager at a tech startup, made a small but loyal group of friends, dated occasionally, though nothing serious stuck. My apartment in Cambridge became my sanctuary, small but filled with books, plants, and art from local creators. I was proud of the life I'd built, yet something fundamental felt missing without my brother's presence in it. The last meaningful conversation we had was 6 months ago when he called to announce his engagement. Despite everything, genuine happiness for him surged through me. "I'm so thrilled for you, Kev," I said, using my childhood nickname for him. "You deserve all the happiness in the world." "Thanks, Hales," he replied, and for a moment, I heard the warmth of my brother return. "It means a lot coming from you." I immediately offered to help with wedding planning. I could design invitations, research venues, whatever they needed. There was an awkward pause. "That's really sweet," he finally said. "But Stephanie's mom is handling most of it, and they've hired a wedding planner for the rest." Still, I held on to hope that the wedding would bring us closer again, that somehow, sharing in this milestone would remind Kevin of our bond. I imagined us laughing during his bachelor party stories, sharing a special sibling dance at the reception, toasting to new beginnings while acknowledging our shared past. So I waited for that invitation, checking my mailbox eagerly for months. And when it finally arrived, it wasn't an invitation at all. The day the letter arrived started like any other Tuesday. My alarm blared at 6:30 a.m., and I dragged myself out of bed to water my collection of houseplants before my morning run along the Charles River. My apartment was bathed in the soft golden light of early autumn, my favorite season in New England. The crisp air, the changing leaves, and the sense of new beginnings always energized me. I returned home, showered, and made my usual breakfast smoothie before heading downstairs to check my mail. The brass mailbox in the lobby of my brownstone apartment building was usually filled with nothing but bills and flyers, but that day was different. Wedged between a utility bill and a takeout menu was a cream-colored envelope with elegant handwriting I immediately recognized as Kevin's. My heart raced as I examined the envelope. The paper was thick and expensive, with a subtle shimmer, definitely wedding stationery. Finally, after months of waiting, the invitation had arrived. I practically skipped back upstairs, clutching the envelope to my chest. Back in my apartment, I carefully opened it, not wanting to tear what I assumed would be a beautiful invitation. Inside wasn't the expected formal card with gold embossing and RSVP details. Instead, there was just a small note card with a handwritten message. "Dear Haley, I hope this note finds you well. Stephanie and I wanted to let you know that our wedding ceremony and reception will be an adults-only event. We hope you understand and look forward to celebrating with you another time. Love, Kevin." I read it 3 times, trying to make sense of the words. Adults only? I'm 32 years old with a corporate job and a 401k. I'm hardly a child. Confusion gave way to realization as the truth sank in. This wasn't an invitation. This was the opposite, a formal uninvitation. A notification that I wasn't welcome. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. I dialed Kevin's number, my breathing shallow and quick. It went straight to voicemail. "Kevin, it's me. I just got your note about the wedding being adults only, and I'm confused. I'm literally an adult. Call me back, please." I tried to focus on work emails, but my concentration was shattered. After an hour with no response, I sent a text. "Got your note. Not sure I understand. Can we talk about this?" 20 minutes later, his reply came through. "In meetings all day. It's just easier this way, with venue constraints. Talk later." Venue constraints? For his only sibling? The excuse was so transparent, it made my stomach turn. I tried calling again that evening. When he didn't answer, I finally called Stephanie directly. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice cool and collected. "Haley, this isn't a good time. We're meeting with the florist. I just need to understand what's happening," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Kevin sent me a note saying the wedding is adults only, but that doesn't make any sense." She sighed, the sound tinny through the phone. "Look, we're trying to keep the guest list manageable. The venue has strict capacity limits." "I'm his sister," I said, my voice cracking. "His only sibling." "I understand that," she replied, though her tone suggested she didn't. "But with family tensions being what they are, we thought this would be easiest." "What family tensions?" I asked, genuinely bewildered. "Kevin mentioned you two haven't been close lately," she said. "And with your tendency to be emotional, we worried it might create awkwardness." My tendency to be emotional? I felt like I'd been slapped. "Before I could respond, she continued, "we really need to get back to this meeting. Kevin can call you tomorrow to explain further." The line went dead before I could reply. I sat in stunned silence, clutching my phone. Through tears, I opened Instagram and was immediately confronted with posts from mutual friends about bachelor and bachelorette party preparations. People I barely knew, colleagues from Kevin's firm, Stephanie's college roommates, distant cousins we saw only at funerals, all celebrating their inclusion in a wedding I was explicitly excluded from. Desperate for answers, I called my mother. "Honey, I was hoping they'd change their minds," she said after I explained the situation, confirming she'd known all along. "Stephanie's parents are contributing significantly to the wedding, and they have strong opinions about the guest list." "And Kevin just went along with that? With excluding his own sister?" Her silence was answer enough. "Will you be there?" I asked, already knowing the answer.
"I'm sorry, sweetheart."
I tried to convince him this was wrong, but she would still attend. Everyone would. Life would go on as if my exclusion was a minor detail rather than a seismic rejection. I spent that night scrolling through years of photos. Kevin and me building sandcastles at Cape Cod. Kevin holding a proud brother sign at my college graduation. Kevin and me at Thanksgiving just 2 years ago, arms slung around each other's shoulders, matching grins. What had happened to us? When had I become dispensable? Through mutual friends, I learned that nearly everyone else in our social circle had received proper invitations months ago. I was the only significant omission. The knowledge settled in my chest like a stone, heavy and immovable. Monday morning found me staring blankly at my computer screen, the marketing proposal I'd been working on for weeks, now meaningless symbols on a digital page. My coworker Jenna stopped by my desk, setting down a coffee. "You look like you need this more than I do," she said, concern evident in her voice. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I replied automatically. "Just didn't sleep well." "Must be contagious. Half the office looks zombified today." She lingered. "You know, the team would survive if you took a few days off. When's the last time you used your vacation days?" I couldn't remember. Between project deadlines and hoping for wedding preparations, I'd barely taken weekends, let alone proper time off. "I'm fine," I repeated, but the words sounded hollow even to my own ears. 20 minutes later, I found myself locked in the third-floor bathroom, silent tears streaming down my face as I clutched the sink for support. The fluorescent lights highlighted the dark circles under my eyes, the pallor of my skin. I barely recognized myself. This wasn't the first time Kevin had excluded me since Stephanie entered his life. There was the law firm's holiday party, where +1s were supposedly limited, yet other colleagues brought siblings. The housewarming celebration for their new Beacon Hill brownstone, where I learned about the gathering through social media posts the following day. The New Year's ski trip with just a few couples that somehow included single friends from Stephanie's side. Each exclusion had hurt, but I'd made excuses for him. He's busy. It was last minute. He's distracted with work. The wedding was different. A wedding was intentional, planned months in advance. This exclusion was deliberate and public, a clear message about my place in his new life. Back at my desk, my phone buzzed with Kevin's name on the screen. I stepped into the stairwell to answer. "Hey," he said, his voice casual as if nothing was wrong. "Sorry I missed your calls." Things are crazy with wedding planning. I bet, I replied, struggling to keep my tone neutral. Though I wouldn't know, since I'm apparently not invited. He sighed. Haley, it's complicated. The venue. Don't. I cut him off. Stephanie already tried the venue excuse. If the space is so limited, why are people I've never met on the guest list while I'm not? Silence stretched between us. What's really going on, Kevin? I pressed. I deserve the truth. Stephanie thinks. He started, then paused. She's worried you might make things about yourself. She says you've always been too dramatic, too emotional. The words hit like physical blows. Too dramatic? For having normal human feelings? For expecting to be included in my only brother's wedding? You're proving her point right now, he said, his voice taking on the condescending tone he used in legal arguments. Listen, we just want a drama-free day. And I'm the drama? My voice rose despite my efforts to control it. I've supported you through everything, Kevin. Everything. When did I become someone you're ashamed of? I'm not ashamed of you, he protested weakly. It's just, Stephanie and I agree this is best. Best for whom? Certainly not for me. And I don't think it's best for you either, but you're too far under her influence to see it. That's not fair, he snapped. You've never given her a chance. I've given her nothing but chances. I was shouting now, grateful for the empty stairwell. I've tried for 4 years to connect with her, to support your relationship, to maintain our bond despite her obvious dislike of me. And this is what I get. Maybe this is why, he said coldly. This reaction right here. This inability to think about anyone but yourself. The accusation stunned me into silence. Was that how he saw me? As selfish? When had our perspectives of our relationship diverged so dramatically? I have to go, he said into the silence. Stephanie's waiting. I hope you can respect our decision and be happy for us from a distance. The call ended, and with it, something fundamental between us. I slumped against the wall, a strange calm replacing the storm of emotions. It was the calm of finality, of a door closing permanently. I returned to my desk, opened my laptop, and did something I'd never done before. I requested emergency vacation time, all 4 weeks I'd accumulated. My boss, seeing my red-rimmed eyes and ashen face, approved it without question. That night, I sat cross-legged on my bed with my laptop, scrolling through travel websites as if in a trance. Southeast Asia, Australia, South America. Places that had always seemed like someday destinations. Why not now? What was keeping me here, really? At 2 a.m., I purchased a one-way ticket to Bangkok, Thailand. The cost made me wince, but something about the decisiveness of the action felt right. I would not sit home alone on Kevin's wedding day, scrolling through social media posts and feeling sorry for myself. I would be too busy living. Packing was cathartic. I pulled clothes from hangers with abandon, stuffed toiletries into bags, and selected books I'd been meaning to read for years. In the back of my closet, I found a photo album from our childhood, Kevin giving me a piggyback ride at the state fair, both of us missing teeth and grinning wildly. I hesitated, then left it on the shelf. This journey wasn't about looking back. As I locked my apartment door the next morning, suitcase in hand, I felt something unexpected alongside the hurt. A flicker of excitement. For the first time in my adult life, I was doing something completely unplanned, completely for myself. If Kevin could rewrite our relationship, then perhaps I could rewrite my own story too. Logan International Airport buzzed with early morning activity as I wheeled my suitcase through automatic doors. The familiar anxiety of travel. Did I forget something? Is my passport actually in my bag? Mingled with a strange sense of liberation. For 24 hours, I would be suspended between worlds, unreachable, belonging nowhere and everywhere. Security lines and boarding announcements faded into white noise as I waited at my gate, watching families and couples and solo travelers like myself coming and going. A young woman tearfully embraced her parents before heading to her departure gate. The scene triggered a memory, Kevin driving me to college, helping carry boxes to my dorm room, his fierce hug before he left. "You're gonna crush it, Hales," he'd said, voice gruff with uncharacteristic emotion. "Call me anytime, day or night." I'd taken him at his word back then, never imagining a time when he wouldn't pick up. The 20-hour journey to Thailand, Boston to Tokyo to Bangkok, gave me ample time to reflect. Somewhere over the Pacific, wrapped in the anonymous darkness of an airplane cabin at night, I began to write in the journal I'd impulsively purchased at an airport shop. Not about Kevin or the wedding, but about myself. When had I last done something spontaneous? When had I prioritized adventure over stability? Had I become too predictable, too safe? Perhaps there was a kernel of truth in Kevin's cruel words. Not that I was selfish or dramatic, but that I had perhaps lived too long in the shadow of our shared history, measuring my worth by the strength of our bond rather than creating an identity wholly my own. Bangkok greeted me with a wall of heat and humidity as I exited Suvarnabhumi Airport. The sensory assault was immediate: honking tuk-tuks, street vendors calling out in musical Thai, the pungent blend of exhaust fumes, tropical flowers, and cooking spices. In the chaos, I felt wonderfully, terrifyingly anonymous. The hostel I'd booked last minute was in the Ari neighborhood, less touristy than the Khao San Road area, according to my hurried research. The female-only dormitory was clean and modern, with privacy curtains on each bunk and lockers for valuables. As I stowed my backpack, a voice came from the bunk above. "First time in Thailand?" I looked up to see a woman about my age with sun-freckled skin and a messy blonde top knot. "Is it that obvious?" I asked. She laughed. "You have that wide-eyed, slightly terrified look. I'm Audrey, by the way. From Vancouver." "Haley, Boston. Solo traveler?" I nodded, the reality of my situation suddenly hitting me. I was literally on the other side of the world, alone, with no real plan. "Best way to travel," Audrey said confidently. "A few of us are heading out for street food if you want to join. Best cure for jet lag is to power through and adjust to local time immediately." My instinct was to decline, to retreat to the safety of solitude. But wasn't breaking patterns the whole point of this journey? "I'd like that," I heard myself say. That first evening in Bangkok was a blur of new experiences: navigating the Sky Train, eating pad thai from a street vendor while perched on a tiny plastic stool, learning to say thank you in Thai from Audrey and her friends. I fell into bed exhausted but too stimulated to sleep, the unfamiliar sounds of the city filtering through the hostel window. The next morning, I set out alone to explore, armed with a tourist map and limited confidence. Within an hour, I was hopelessly lost in a labyrinth of market stalls. Panic rose in my throat as I circled the same temple for the third time. Then my phone pinged with a text from my mother. "Just picked up my mother-of-the-groom dress. Navy blue with sequins. Kevin says the venue looks gorgeous with all the flower arrangements." Reality crashed back. While I was wandering foreign streets, preparations for a celebration I wasn't welcome to attend continued without a hitch. The casual cruelty of the message, my mother's obliviousness to how such updates might affect me, triggered a wave of dizziness. I stumbled to a nearby bench, breathing becoming difficult. A panic attack here now thousands of miles from home.
Perfect.
"Miss? Miss okay?" An elderly Thai woman from the nearby flower stall approached, concern evident despite the language barrier. I tried to nod, but tears betrayed me. Without hesitation, she disappeared into her stall and returned with a small cup of water and a jasmine flower, which she gently tucked behind my ear. "Beautiful lady, no cry," she said in halting English, patting my hand. "Thailand happy place." The simple kindness from a stranger broke something open in me. I accepted the water with shaking hands, the jasmine's sweet scent cutting through my distress. When my breathing steadied, I purchased one of her intricate flower garlands, overpaying deliberately. Her smile as she waved goodbye felt like the first genuine human connection I'd had in months. That night, I found a small restaurant where I ordered by pointing at another customer's dish. The resulting meal, A fragrant green curry with vegetables I couldn't identify was the most vibrantly alive thing I'd tasted in years. As I savored each bite, my phone lit up with another text, this time from Kevin. Mom said she told you about the venue. Hope you're doing well. Miss you. Miss me? The audacity nearly made me laugh aloud. I turned my phone off without responding and ordered mango sticky rice for dessert. Tomorrow I decided I would leave Bangkok. The city's frenetic energy matched my internal chaos too closely. I needed space to breathe, to think, to begin healing. At the hostel, I researched coastal destinations and booked a bus ticket to Krabi Province in southern Thailand. As the air-conditioned bus wound through the Thai countryside the next day, lush green landscapes unlike anything in New England stretched in every direction. Palm trees, rice paddies, small villages with golden temple roofs glinting in the sunlight. For the first time since receiving that cream-colored envelope, I felt a flicker of gratitude. If I'd been included in the wedding, I'd be in Boston right now, helping with centerpieces or attending bridal showers, playing my assigned role in someone else's story. Instead, I was writing a new chapter of my own, one where being excluded wasn't an ending but a beginning. Railay Beach materialized like a postcard come to life. Limestone cliffs towering over turquoise water, longtail boats bobbing on gentle waves, powdery white sand stretching into the distance. My beachfront hostel was simple, but positioned perfectly for sunset views. After the sensory overload of Bangkok, the rhythm of ocean waves felt like medicine. On my second evening, I noticed a small group around a beach bonfire and recognized Audrey's distinctive laugh. She spotted me and waved enthusiastically. "Boston. Come join us." The circle opened to include me, Audrey from Vancouver, Tyler, an American photographer from Seattle documenting Southeast Asian climbing destinations, Maya, a Canadian kindergarten teacher on summer break, and Luis, a Spanish chef taking a year off to travel before opening his own restaurant. "What brings you to Thailand solo?" Maya asked as she passed me a bottle of local beer. "Just needed a change of scenery," I replied automatically, the deflection practiced. Tyler gave me a knowing look. Most people don't fly across the world on a whim just for scenery. There's usually a story there. Something about the gathering, strangers becoming temporary family around firelight, the vast darkness of ocean and sky making human problems seem smaller, loosened my grip on privacy. "My brother is getting married," I said, surprised by my willingness to share. And I wasn't invited. Instead of awkward sympathy, there was a moment of collective indignation on my behalf. "That's messed up," Tyler said simply. "Family can really hurt you in ways no one else can." "Tell me about it," Luis added. "I didn't speak to my father for 3 years after he missed my culinary school graduation for a golf tournament." "Are you close with your brother usually?" Maya asked. The question opened a floodgate. Before I knew it, I was telling these strangers everything: the childhood bond, the gradual distance, Stephanie's subtle hostility, the adults-only excuse. As I spoke, the hurt transformed from a private shame to a shared human experience. "My sister and I haven't spoken in 5 years," Tyler confided when I finished. "She married a guy who thought I was a bad influence because I chose photography over a real career. Eventually, she stopped returning my calls." "Have you tried to reconnect?" I asked. "Every birthday, every Christmas," he said. "At some point, you have to accept that you can't force someone to want you in their life, even family. Especially family." Maya, more optimistic, insisted that time often healed such wounds. "My mother and aunt didn't speak for a decade over inheritance drama. Now they're inseparable." "The question isn't whether he'll come around," Luis said, poking the fire with a stick. "It's whether you'll still want him in your life if he does." Their perspectives, ranging from Tyler's pragmatic acceptance to Maya's hopeful patience, offered a prism through which to view my situation differently. These weren't people who knew Kevin or me or our history. Their insights came without agenda or baggage. The next morning, when Tyler invited me to join their island-hopping excursion, I agreed without hesitation. The day passed in a blur of snorkeling over coral reefs, climbing rocky outcrops to panoramic viewpoints, and sharing fresh pineapple on pristine beaches accessible only by boat. 4 hours at a time, I forgot about Boston, about the wedding, about the hurt. That night, checking my email on the hostel's spotty Wi-Fi, I found a message from my boss. "Team misses you, but take all the time you need. Position secure when you're ready to return." The assurance of a job to come back to freed something in me. On impulse, I extended my hostel reservation by 2 weeks, then messaged my new friends to see if they were interested in traveling north to Chiang Mai afterward. All 3 were enthusiastic, and just like that, my impromptu escape transformed into a proper journey. The following days established a rhythm. Mornings exploring with my travel companions, afternoons sometimes alone with my journal on quieter beaches, evenings sharing meals and stories. I deleted my social media apps, tired of the wedding updates that friends unknowingly shared. The distance from constant digital connection proved surprisingly liberating. A week into our time in Railay, we volunteered at an elephant sanctuary in the nearby jungle. Unlike the tourist traps offering elephant rides, this was a legitimate rescue operation where elephants roamed freely. We prepared food, cleaned enclosures, and observed these gentle giants from a respectful distance. They never forget their families, the sanctuary director told us. Elephants maintain bonds over decades, even when separated. They mourn their dead, celebrate births, protect their vulnerable. In many ways, they understand family better than humans do. Watching a mother elephant gently guiding her calf through a mud pit, I felt unexpected tears spring to my eyes. Tyler, noticing, quietly handed me his camera. "Sometimes seeing things through a different lens helps," he said. "Try focusing on them instead of whatever's going on inside your head." Through his viewfinder, I captured the elephant's tender interactions, trunks entwined, bodies positioned to shade younger members from the sun, the matriarch keeping constant watch. The focus required to take good photographs pushed other thoughts aside, creating a meditative space where past and future momentarily ceased to exist. That evening, Maya convinced us to visit a nearby Buddhist temple where an English-speaking monk offered meditation guidance to visitors. The temple was a haven of tranquility, golden Buddha statues gleaming in candlelight. The monk, younger than I expected and with an unexpected sense of humor, spoke about attachment as the root of suffering. "We cling to expectations, of ourselves, of others, of how relationships should be," he explained. "When reality differs from these expectations, we suffer. The path to peace is not forcing reality to match our expectations, but adjusting our expectations to accept reality." "That sounds like giving up," I said, the words escaping before I could filter them. He smiled. "There is a difference between surrender and acceptance. Surrender is defeat. Acceptance is understanding that some things are beyond your control and choosing to direct your energy where it can make a difference, in your own actions, your own heart." His words followed me back to the beach, where I sat alone watching moonlight on water. I had expected Kevin to maintain our bond despite Stephanie, despite growing differences in our lives. I had expected family to trump all other considerations. When reality failed to meet these expectations, I'd been devastated. But what if I accepted the reality, not as fair or right, but simply as what was? What if, instead of fighting for a relationship with someone who clearly didn't prioritize me, I focused on connections that were freely offered, like my new friends? What if the energy I'd spent feeling hurt was redirected into building a life so fulfilling that exclusion from a single event, even one as significant as a brother's wedding, couldn't derail my happiness? For the first time, I considered the possibility that this painful rejection might actually be a gift, the push I needed to stop defining myself in relation to others and start discovering who I was on my own terms. In Chiang Mai's ancient walled city, calendar notifications became impossible to ignore. 3 days until Kevin's wedding. 2 days. 1. I'd been marking time by Thai adventures rather than wedding milestones, but reality had a way of intruding despite distance. The actual wedding day began with a 3 a.m. panic attack in our guest house. I slipped outside to avoid waking Maya in our shared room, sitting on the stone steps as anxiety crashed over me in waves. This was the moment I'd been dreading and trying to outrun since the non-invitation arrived. Couldn't sleep either? Tyler appeared in the doorway, camera in hand. I was heading out to catch sunrise at Doi Suthep Temple. Want to join? I hesitated, then nodded.
Yes. Definitely yes.
The mountainous temple complex was shrouded in dawn mist when we arrived, gold stupas emerging like islands in a cloud sea. While Tyler photographed monks beginning their morning rituals, I found a quiet corner overlooking the city below. Back in Boston, it would be afternoon. Kevin would be getting ready, perhaps nervous, surrounded by groomsmen. My parents would be dressed in their finest, my mother in her navy sequin dress. Stephanie would be transformed into a bride, her triumph complete in excluding me from witnessing this milestone. Tyler found me still sitting there an hour later, his photography finished. Without a word, he sat beside me. "Today's the wedding, isn't it?" he asked quietly. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I figured. "You've had this look all week, like you're bracing for impact." He hesitated. "Want to talk about it?" "Not really," I admitted. "But maybe I need to." He waited patiently as I gathered my thoughts. "I've been trying to understand why it hurts so much," I finally said. "It's just one day, right? But it feels like being erased from his life, from our shared history." "It's symbolic," Tyler said. "Weddings are about merging families, creating new bonds. Being excluded sends a pretty clear message about where you stand." Exactly. The validation was surprisingly comforting. "I keep wondering if I did something wrong, if I deserve this somehow. From everything you've told us, the only thing you did wrong was exist as a reminder of who your brother was before his fiancée came along." His tone was matter-of-fact rather than pitying. "Some people need to erase their past to move forward. It says more about them than about you." We watched in silence as the sun fully emerged, burning away mist to reveal the sprawling city below. "I've been thinking about writing him a letter," I confessed. "Not angry or accusatory, just honest about how this has affected me. I'm not sure if I should send it." "Want help drafting it?" Tyler offered. Sometimes an outside perspective helps find the right words. Back at the guest house, Maya and Luis had organized a surprise day trip to a hidden waterfall they'd heard about from locals, their attempt to distract me. The gesture nearly brought me to tears. "First, breakfast and letter writing," Maya declared. "Then adventure. No wallowing allowed today." Over mango sticky rice and strong Thai coffee, I poured my heart onto paper with Tyler's occasional gentle guidance. "Dear Kevin, asterisk as you read this, you're probably married. I hope your day was everything you dreamed it would be. Despite everything, I want you to be happy. That hasn't changed since we were kids, and I looked up to my big brother as my hero. Asterisk, what has changed is my understanding of our relationship. Your decision to exclude me from your wedding clarified things I've been trying to ignore for years. The brother who once drove hours to bring me soup when I was heartbroken wouldn't have allowed anyone, even someone he loves, to push his only sister away on such an important day. Asterisk, I'm not writing to make you feel guilty or to demand explanations. I'm writing because holding these feelings inside has become too painful, and I need to release them to move forward. Being uninvited from your wedding hurt more deeply than I can express. It felt like a public declaration that our shared history and bond meant nothing compared to your new family's preferences. Asterisk, this isn't about disliking Stephanie or not supporting your relationship. It's about feeling disposable to someone who once made me feel irreplaceable. It's about wondering what changed in you, in me, in us, that made my presence on your wedding day unwelcome rather than essential. Asterisk, I'm currently in Thailand, finding my way through this hurt. I've met incredible people who have helped me see that family is both what we're born into and what we choose. I hope someday we can rebuild a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine desire for connection rather than obligation or shared history alone. Asterisk, I will always cherish the brother you were to me growing up. I hope someday to know and cherish the man you've become, if there's room for me in that picture. Asterisk, with love. Asterisk, Haley. Asterisk, I sealed the letter in an envelope, addressing it to his home rather than the honeymoon destination. Whether I'd actually send it remained uncertain, but writing it felt like lancing a wound, painful but necessary for healing. The waterfall excursion proved to be exactly what I needed. A strenuous hike through dense jungle, the reward of swimming in crystal-clear pools beneath cascading water, a picnic on sun-warmed rocks. In those moments of pure presence, Kevin's wedding faded to background noise rather than the main event of my day. That evening, as the others went out to explore Chiang Mai's famous night market, I stayed behind, suddenly needing solitude. When my phone rang with my mother's number, I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won out. "Haley, can you hear me?" The connection's not great. My mother's voice sounded thin and far away. "I hear you, Mom. How was the wedding?" I asked, surprised by my own composure. "Beautiful. Everything went perfectly." She paused. "Except for one thing." "What's that?" "Your brother kept looking for you," she said softly. "During the ceremony, during photos, during the first dance. He'd scan the room like he was expecting you to appear." Something tightened in my chest. Did he say anything? Not directly. But he seemed off, distracted. Even Stephanie noticed. Another pause. "I think he regrets how things happened, honey." I wasn't sure how to feel about this information. Part of me wanted vindication, for Kevin to realize his mistake and suffer for it. Another part just felt sad for both of us, trapped in patterns neither fully understood. "It's done now," I said finally. "I hope they're happy together." After we hung up, I sat on the guest house balcony watching street life below, processing the conversation. My phone buzzed again around midnight. Kevin's number. My heart raced as I answered. "Haley." His voice was slurred, background noise, suggesting a bar or club. "Is that you?" "It's me. Aren't you supposed to be celebrating right now?" "I am. We are. Honeymoon in Bali." He sounded artificially cheerful. "But I needed to call you. Needed to hear your voice." "You're drunk, Kevin." "Maybe. Probably." He laughed, then his voice dropped. "I made a mistake, Hales. Biggest mistake. Should have had you there." In the background, I heard Stephanie's voice, sharp with irritation. "Kevin? Who are you talking to?" "It's my sister," he replied, voice moving away from the phone. "I'm just telling her about the wedding."
Now?
"It's our honeymoon." "Hang up." "Just 1 minute," he protested. "Now, Kevin." Her tone brooked no argument. He returned to the phone.
You gotta go.
"But I needed you to know I missed you. We'll fix this when I get back, okay? Promise. Love you, Hales." The call ended before I could respond. I sat staring at my phone, emotions swirling. The Kevin who called, emotional, regretful, easily swayed, was the brother I remembered and the husband I feared he'd become. His moment of clarity, brought on by alcohol and distance from Stephanie's immediate influence, confirmed what I'd suspected. He had known excluding me was wrong but lacked the courage to stand firm. Yet his promise to fix this rang hollow. What exactly did fixing entail? A belated apology? Occasional inclusion when Stephanie permitted it? I was no longer sure that was enough. Tyler found me still on the balcony an hour later, returning from the night market with a small paper bag. "Thought you might need this," he said, revealing a bottle of Thai whiskey and 2 small glasses. "Maya mentioned your mom called." "Wedding update." I nodded, accepting a measured pour. "And Kevin too, actually. Drunk dialed me from his honeymoon to say he regrets not having me there." Tyler raised an eyebrow. "How do you feel about that?"
Confused. Sad.
"A little angry still." I sipped the whiskey, welcoming its warmth. 2 months ago, that call would have meant everything to me. Now, I'm not sure it changes anything. "Because words are easy," Tyler suggested. "Especially drunk ones."
Exactly.
He had months to stand up for me, to insist I be included. He chose not to repeatedly. One remorseful phone call doesn't erase that. We sat in companionable silence, the city's distant sounds creating a gentle backdrop. "The monk at the temple said something that keeps coming back to me," I said eventually. "About directing energy where it can make a difference." I've spent so much energy on a relationship that Kevin wasn't equally invested in. And now, I looked out at the twinkling lights of Chiang Mai, so far from everything familiar, yet somehow feeling more at home than I had in months. Now I think I need to set some boundaries. When he reaches out again sober, I'll be honest about what I need from him going forward. Not promises, but consistent actions that show I matter. I turned to Tyler. But I'm also realizing my happiness can't depend on his choices anymore. He clinked his glass against mine. That, my friend, sounds like the beginning of freedom. My final days in Thailand passed in a kaleidoscope of experiences, releasing paper lanterns into the night sky during a local festival, learning to cook authentic pad thai from a grandmother who spoke no English but communicated perfectly through smiles and gestures, meditating at sunrise with Maya, photographing street life with Tyler, sampling exotic fruits in markets with Luis. With each new experience, the wedding and its aftermath receded further into perspective. A significant hurt, yes, but no longer the defining story of my life. You're different than when we met, Audrey observed our last night together in Bangkok, where we'd returned to catch our respective flights home. Less tense, more present. Thailand changed me, I said, but that wasn't quite right. Or rather, it gave me space to change myself. We exchanged contact information with genuine promises to stay in touch. Tyler was heading to Vietnam next, Maya back to Canada for the school year, Luis to Indonesia to continue his culinary exploration. Our paths had crossed briefly but meaningfully, proof that family could be found in unexpected places. The flight back to Boston gave me time to prepare mentally for return. I'd been gone just over 3 weeks, but it felt like years. The journal I'd started on the outbound flight was now filled with observations, insights, and plans. Not just travel plans, but life plans. Changes I wanted to make, boundaries I needed to set, dreams I'd deferred too long. My apartment felt smaller than I remembered, slightly stale from disuse. I threw open windows, unpacked souvenirs, a hand-carved elephant, colorful silk scarves, spices for Thai cooking attempts. Rather than simply replacing everything as it had been, I rearranged furniture, hung photographs Tyler had taken of our adventures, created a meditation corner with cushions inspired by the temple. The physical changes reflected internal ones. I was not returning to my old life, but creating a new one that incorporated what I'd learned. At work, colleagues noticed the difference immediately. "Whatever that vacation did, you should bottle and sell it," my boss said after I presented fresh ideas for our struggling client campaign. "You're practically glowing." I threw myself into projects with renewed creativity, no longer working overtime out of a vague sense that I had nothing better to do. Instead, I established clearer boundaries between work and personal time, using evenings to explore local photography classes, join a hiking group, and experiment with Thai cooking techniques. Kevin returned from his honeymoon 2 weeks after I came home. His text was casual, as if nothing significant had happened between us. "Back in town. Coffee soon." We arranged to meet at a neutral cafe halfway between our neighborhoods. I arrived early, claiming a corner table and ordering tea to calm my nerves. When he walked in, I was struck by how ordinary he looked, the same Kevin as always, not the villain or hero my emotions had painted him to be. "You look great," he said after an awkward hug. "Different somehow." Thailand agreed with me. I replied simply. He nodded, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "About the wedding. It's okay?" I interrupted. "You don't need to explain." "I do, though." His expression was pained. "I've been a terrible brother. The way everything happened with the invitation, it was wrong. I knew it was wrong even as I went along with it." "Why did you?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for months. He sighed heavily. "It's complicated. Stephanie and her family had this vision of the perfect day. When her parents offered to pay for most of it, they came with conditions about the guest list. I told myself it was just one day, that it didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But it did matter," I said quietly. "It was symbolic of something bigger happening between us." "I see that now." He stared into his coffee. For what it's worth, I regretted it the entire day. It felt wrong not having you there. I appreciate you saying that, I said, surprised to find I genuinely meant it. But Kevin, this isn't just about the wedding. It's about years of pulling away, of letting your relationship with Stephanie change your relationship with me. He didn't deny it, which was something. I don't know how to balance everything. Stephanie gets jealous sometimes of my relationship with you, with how close we were growing up. She didn't have that with her siblings. That's understandable, I said carefully. But it doesn't make it okay to exclude me from important parts of your life. I'm not asking to be your priority, but I am asking to be valued. You are valued, he insisted. I love you, Hales. That never changed. Love isn't just a feeling, Kevin. It's actions. It's showing up. It's sometimes making difficult choices to protect important relationships. I took a deep breath. Moving forward, I need to see consistent effort from you if you want me in your life. Not just when it's convenient or when Stephanie approves. He looked startled by my directness. The old Haley might have accepted his apology without conditions, grateful for any reconnection. The new Haley understood her own worth too well for that. That's fair, he said finally. I want to do better. I miss my sister. I miss my brother too, I admitted. The one who saw me clearly and valued what he saw. We talked for nearly 2 hours, covering ground we should have addressed years ago. There were no miraculous resolutions or tearful reconciliations, just two adults tentatively rebuilding a damaged bridge, neither certain it would hold, but both willing to try. As fall turned to winter, Kevin made small but consistent efforts. Weekly phone calls, occasional lunch meetings, even inviting me to dinner at their home, though Stephanie remained coolly polite rather than welcoming. I accepted these overtures with cautious optimism while maintaining the full life I'd begun creating post-Thailand. Thanksgiving brought the first real test, a family gathering at my parents' home with Kevin and Stephanie attending. The potential for awkwardness was high, but I arrived centered after a morning meditation and determined to focus on gratitude rather than lingering hurt. Stephanie's coolness continued, but I found it affected me less than before. Her opinion of me was her business. I no longer needed her approval to validate my place in my brother's life. Kevin noticed her behavior more clearly now, occasionally redirecting conversations when she became dismissive or checking in with me privately to ensure I felt included. Small steps, but meaningful ones. As dishes were cleared and family dispersed to various couches for post-meal naps, Kevin found me on the back porch. "Thanks for being here," he said simply. "It means a lot."
I'm glad I came. I replied.
Though I almost didn't. I had an offer to join Tyler in Peru for the holiday. He's photographing Machu Picchu for National Geographic. Tyler from Thailand. Kevin asked, looking genuinely interested. "You've stayed in touch?" I nodded, showing him recent photos Tyler had sent from his travels. "We all have, Maya, Luis, Audrey. We're planning a reunion trip to Japan next spring." "That's amazing," Kevin said, and I detected no judgment, only perhaps a hint of wistfulness. "You've built quite a life while I wasn't paying attention." "I had to," I said honestly. I couldn't keep waiting for my happiness to come from our relationship being fixed. He absorbed this with surprising grace. "I understand that now. I'm just grateful you're giving us another chance." Later that evening, back in my apartment, I texted Tyler about the day's events while finalizing details for my weekend photography workshop. On my wall hung a framed image he'd taken of me at the elephant sanctuary. Head thrown back in laughter, sunlight catching my hair, looking completely present and alive. Beside it was a new calendar marked with upcoming adventures, a solo hiking trip to Maine, a cooking class series, the Japan reunion. The journey that began with a painful exclusion had led me to unexpected inclusion in a broader world. The brother, who had once been my entire definition of family, was now just one important thread in a rich tapestry of connections. As I prepared for bed, I noticed Kevin had liked my recent Instagram post, a self-portrait taken at the summit of a local hiking trail. A small gesture, but one that suggested he was finally seeing me as I now was, not just who I had been in relation to him. The path forward remained uncertain. Relationships damaged by years of neglect weren't repaired in weeks or months. Stephanie might never fully welcome me. Kevin might struggle to maintain his promises when pressured. But for the first time, I faced these possibilities without fear. My happiness no longer hinged on outcomes I couldn't control. The uninvitation that once devastated me had ultimately given an unexpected gift. It had forced me to discover who I was beyond being Kevin's sister, beyond familiar patterns and comfortable limitations. In losing what I thought was essential, I had found something more valuable: myself. So, what about you? Have you ever experienced painful exclusion that ultimately led to unexpected growth? Or had to set boundaries with family members who hurt you? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and like this video to help others find it. Remember, sometimes the most painful rejections can lead to the most beautiful redirections. Thank you for traveling this path with me today, and until next time, keep creating your own adventures, whether they include everyone you hoped for or not.